Around 3100 BCE, along the fertile ribbon of the Nile, a transformative event unfolds. Upper and Lower Egypt fuse into one. This moment marks the genesis of a new political entity, a centralized state ruled by a pharaoh, a living god. Narmer, or perhaps Menes, holds the reins of power on an unprecedented scale, overseeing a complex administration, monumental construction that scrapes the sky, and a nascent military. This early Egyptian state, with its enduring dynasties and vast resources, demonstrates a power that lasts for millennia, shaping the ancient world through its overflowing granaries, advanced bureaucracy, and monumental architecture, like the pyramids of Giza, built around 2580 to 2560 BCE. Its influence stretches through shimmering trade routes, military campaigns carving paths into Nubia and the Levant, and the very concept of divine kingship, which casts a long shadow. Further east, in Mesopotamia, another crucible of civilization bubbles with activity. Sumerian city-states like Ur, Uruk, and Lagash flourish from around 4000 BCE, weaving intricate irrigation systems across the land, etching cuneiform writing onto clay tablets, and crafting sophisticated legal codes. These city-states, though often warring amongst themselves, represent early forms of organized power, with ziggurats towering like man-made mountains as centers of religious and political authority. Sargon of Akkad, around 2334 BCE, forges the world's first empire, uniting these disparate Sumerian cities under a single rule, stretching from the Persian Gulf's blue waters to the Mediterranean's distant shores. His Akkadian empire, though relatively short-lived, demonstrates the potential for centralized military power to conquer and consolidate vast territories. Following its collapse, the Babylonian Empire emerges under Hammurabi around 1792 BCE, establishing a powerful kingdom renowned for its comprehensive legal code etched in stone and its administrative prowess that kept the gears turning. The Hittites from Anatolia rise to prominence around 1600 BCE, mastering iron technology, forging weapons, and perfecting chariot warfare. Their empire challenges Egyptian dominance in the Near East, culminating in the Battle of Kadesh in 1274 BCE, where thousands of chariots thunder across the plain in one of history's largest engagements. This era sees a dynamic interplay of powerful states, their armies clashing, vying for control over vital trade routes and glittering resources. The subsequent Bronze Age collapse, around 1200 BCE, sees many of these powerful empires falter, their structures crumbling, ushering in a period of disruption and the emergence of smaller regional kingdoms. In the first millennium BCE, a new wave of powerful empires begins to assert itself. The Neo-Assyrian Empire, from the 9th to the 7th centuries BCE, becomes the dominant force in the Near East. Known for its formidable and often brutal military machine, its ironclad legions march, conquering vast territories from the sands of Egypt to the mountains of Persia, establishing a sophisticated administrative system and an extensive network of roads that crisscross the land. Their capital, Nineveh, becomes a center of immense wealth and power, its walls gleaming, a testament to their imperial ambition. However, their harsh rule eventually leads to widespread revolts, and the empire collapses in 612 BCE. Under a coalition of Babylonians and Medes, its foundations cracking. The Achaemenid Persian Empire, founded by Cyrus the Great around 550 BCE, dwarfs its predecessors in sheer scale, casting a shadow across the ancient world. Stretching from the Balkans' rugged hills to the Indus Valley's fertile plains, it encompasses a diverse array of peoples and cultures. The Persians establish a remarkably efficient administrative structure, dividing the empire into satrapies governed by appointed satraps, all connected by the royal road, a 1,600-mile network that facilitates rapid communication and the flow of trade goods. Their military, including the elite immortals, whose ranks never thinned, is vast and well-organized, enabling them to project power across 3 continents. The empire's wealth, derived from tribute and trade, is legendary, its coffers overflowing, and its influence on art, architecture, and governance resonates for centuries. Meanwhile, across the Aegean Sea, the city-states of Greece begin to develop a distinct form of political organization. While not unified under a single empire, powerful city-states like Athens and Sparta exert considerable influence. Athens, in the 5th century BCE, under leaders like Pericles, develops a radical form of direct democracy, where citizens gather to vote, fostering intellectual and artistic flourishing. Its naval power, demonstrated in battles like Salamis in 480 BCE. Against the Persians, where Athenian triremes sliced through enemy lines, secures its dominance in the Aegean. Sparta, with its militaristic society and formidable hoplite army, their shields locked, represents a different kind of power, focused on internal discipline and military prowess. The Peloponnesian War, 431 to 404 BCE, between these 2 titans ultimately weakens both, leaving them exhausted, paving the way for the rise of a new power from the north. Philip II of Macedon, in the mid-4th century BCE, transforms his kingdom into a formidable military force, employing innovative tactics and a professional army whose phalanxes bristled with sarissas. He unifies the Greek city-states under Macedonian hegemony, their independence fading. His son, Alexander the Great, inherits this powerful military and embarks on a campaign of conquest that reshapes the ancient world. From 334 to 323 BCE, Alexander conquers the Persian Empire, extending his dominion from Greece's shores to India's far reaches. His empire, though short-lived as a unified entity after his death, disseminates Hellenistic culture, its influence spreading, and establishes numerous cities that become centers of trade and learning, fundamentally altering the geopolitical landscape. Following Alexander's death, his empire fragments into several Hellenistic kingdoms, most notably the Seleucid Empire in the east, its territories vast, the Ptolemaic Kingdom in Egypt, with its pharaohs on the Nile, and the Antigonid Kingdom in Macedon. These successor states maintain significant power and influence for centuries, engaging in complex diplomatic and military rivalries. The Ptolemaic pharaohs, for example, rule Egypt for nearly 300 years, accumulating immense wealth and building Alexandria into a leading intellectual and commercial center, its lighthouse a beacon for the ancient world. To the west, a new power is steadily ascending: Rome. From its origins as a small city-state on the Tiber's banks, Rome gradually expands its control over the Italian peninsula through a combination of military innovation, strategic alliances, and effective administration. The Roman Republic, established in 509 BCE, develops a sophisticated legal system, its laws etched in stone, and a resilient political structure. Its legions, renowned for their discipline and tactical prowess, their shields forming an unbreakable testudo, prove capable of overcoming numerous adversaries. The Punic Wars, 264–146 BCE, against Carthage, a powerful maritime empire in North Africa, are pivotal, their navies clashing in epic sea battles. Rome's eventual triumph establishes its dominance in the Mediterranean, securing vital trade routes and glittering resources. By the 1st century BCE, Rome has become the preeminent power in the Mediterranean world. Julius Caesar's conquests in Gaul, 5850 BCE, expand Roman territory significantly, its legions marching across new lands and bring immense wealth and military prestige. The transition from republic to empire in 27 BCE, with Augustus as the first emperor, marks a new era of centralized imperial power. The Roman Empire, at its zenith under emperors like Trajan in the early 2nd century CE, stretches from Britain's misty shores to Mesopotamia's arid plains, encompassing an estimated 50 to 90 million people. Its vast infrastructure of roads, aqueducts, and cities, its sophisticated legal system, and its powerful legions maintain control over this immense territory for centuries. The Pax Romana, a period of relative peace and stability lasting over 200 years, allows for unprecedented economic growth and cultural exchange across the empire, its influence spreading like ripples in a pond. However, even the most powerful empires face internal and external challenges. The Roman Empire, by the 3rd century CE, experiences a period of crisis marked by political instability, its emperors falling, economic decline, and constant pressure from barbarian tribes along its borders. Emperor Diocletian's reforms in the late 3rd century, including the division of the empire into East and West, attempt to stabilize the vast state. The Western Roman Empire eventually collapses in 476 CE, its last emperor deposed, marking the end of classical antiquity in Europe. In the East, the Byzantine Empire, with its capital at Constantinople, founded by Constantine in 330 CE, continues to thrive for another 1,000 years. It preserves Roman law, Greek culture, and Christian traditions, acting as a bulwark against invasions from the East, its walls standing firm. Under emperors like Justinian I in the 6th century, the Byzantine Empire experiences a period of resurgence, reconquering parts of the former Western Roman Empire and codifying Roman law in the Corpus Juris Civilis, a monumental legal work that influences European law for centuries. Its strategic location, formidable fortifications, and sophisticated diplomacy allow it to maintain its power and influence in the Mediterranean and Near East. Simultaneously, in the East, other powerful empires are rising and falling. In China, the Han Dynasty, 206 BCE, 220 CE, establishes a centralized imperial system that endures for 4 centuries, its mandate of heaven secure. Its vast bureaucracy, sophisticated civil service examination system, and military prowess allow it to expand its territory, maintain the Silk Road trade routes, and exert significant influence over East Asia. The Han Empire, with an estimated population of 60 million people, represents a paragon of imperial administration and cultural achievement. After its collapse, China experiences a period of disunity, but the concept of a unified empire remains a powerful ideal, a dream waiting to be reborn. The Tang Dynasty, 618–907 CE, in China marks another golden age of imperial power. Its capital, Chang'an, becomes the largest city in the world, a cosmopolitan hub of trade and culture, its markets bustling. The Tang Empire expands its influence into Central Asia, Korea, and Vietnam, developing a formidable military and a highly efficient administrative system. Its cultural achievements in poetry, art, and technology are profound, and its political structure serves as a model for subsequent Chinese dynasties, casting a long shadow. In the Islamic world, the rise of the Rashidun Caliphate in the 7th century, following the death of the Prophet Muhammad, marks a rapid expansion of political and religious power, its armies sweeping across lands. Within a century, the Umayyad Caliphate, 660–1750 CE, establishes an empire stretching from Spain's sun-drenched coasts to India's fertile plains, encompassing vast territories and diverse populations. This empire is characterized by its emphasis on Islamic law, its advanced scholarship, and its sophisticated administrative structures. The subsequent Abbasid Caliphate, 750–1250 CE, with its capital in Baghdad, ushers in a golden age of Islamic civilization, fostering intellectual and scientific advancements that profoundly influence the world. The Abbasids maintain a vast and wealthy empire. Though its political unity gradually fragments over time, its edges fraying. In Europe, after the collapse of the Western Roman Empire, a new political landscape emerges. Frankish kings, most notably Charlemagne in the late 8th and early 9th centuries, forge a powerful empire that briefly reunites much of Western Europe. Charlemagne's coronation as Holy Roman Emperor by Pope Leo III in 800 CE symbolizes a renewed aspiration for a universal Christian empire. His empire, though fragmented after his death, lays the groundwork for the development of distinct kingdoms and the Holy Roman Empire, a complex entity that dominates Central Europe for centuries. The Viking Age, from the late 8th to the mid-11th centuries, sees Scandinavian seafarers, their longships cutting through the waves, exert considerable influence through raids, trade, and settlement across Europe, from Russia's vast plains to North America's distant shores. While not forming a unified empire, their maritime power and military prowess profoundly impact the development of various European states. The High Middle Ages witnessed the consolidation of powerful monarchies in Western Europe. England, under monarchs like William the Conqueror in the 11th century, develops a strong, centralized monarchy with a sophisticated legal system. France, under the Capetian dynasty, gradually expands its royal authority, culminating in the Hundred Years' War, 1337–1453, against England, a conflict that ultimately strengthens the French monarchy and fosters a sense of national identity, its people united under a banner. Further east, the Mongol Empire, founded by Genghis Khan in the early 13th century, represents an unprecedented explosion of military power. Through brilliant military strategy and ruthless efficiency, the Mongols create the largest contiguous land empire in history, stretching from Eastern Europe's steppes to the Pacific Ocean. Their conquests devastate existing powers, leaving cities in ruins, but also facilitate unprecedented cultural exchange and trade across Eurasia. The Pax Mongolica, a period of relative peace within the empire, allows for the flourishing of the Silk Road and the transmission of ideas and technologies. After Genghis Khan's death, the empire fragments into several powerful successor states, including the Golden Horde in Russia, the Ilkhanate in Persia, and the Yuan dynasty in China. In the 15th and 16th centuries, new powers begin to emerge on the global stage, driven by technological advancements in navigation and shipbuilding. The Age of Exploration sees European maritime powers, particularly Portugal and Spain, embark on voyages that connect the continents. Portugal, under figures like Henry the Navigator, establishes a vast maritime empire, its caravels tracing routes around Africa to India and Southeast Asia. Spain, following the voyages of Columbus in 1492, rapidly conquers vast territories in the Americas, extracting immense wealth in silver and gold, which fills its coffers. The Spanish Empire, with its vast colonial possessions, becomes the dominant global power in the 16th century, funding its powerful army and navy, the Spanish Armada, whose ships filled the horizon. The Ottoman Empire, founded in the late 13th century, rises to become a formidable power in the Near East and Eastern Europe. After conquering Constantinople in 1453, its cannons breaching the ancient walls, it establishes a vast empire that controls the Balkans, Anatolia, the Middle East, and North Africa. Its military, particularly the Janissaries, is highly effective, and its administrative system is sophisticated. The Ottoman Empire, at its peak under Suleiman the Magnificent in the 16th century, rivals the major European powers, controlling vital trade routes and acting as a major force in international politics. The Reformation in the 16th century, initiated by figures like Martin Luther, shatters the religious unity of Western Europe and leads to a series of devastating religious wars. These conflicts, such as the 30 Years' War, 1848, involve most of the major European powers and result in immense devastation and loss of life, leaving landscapes scarred. The war, initially a religious conflict, evolves into a struggle for political dominance and territorial control among the emerging nation-states. The Treaty of Westphalia in 1648 establishes the modern nation-state system and sovereign borders. The Treaty of Westphalia in 1648 fundamentally reshapes the European political order, formally recognizing the sovereignty of individual states and establishing the principle of non-interference in internal affairs. This pivotal agreement marks the decline of universal empires, their grand visions fading, and the ascendance of the nation-state as the primary unit of international relations. The Holy Roman Empire, a sprawling and fragmented entity, loses much of its remaining authority, its influence waning, while new and consolidating powers begin to assert themselves. France, under the absolute monarchy of Louis XIV, emerges as a dominant force. The Sun King, reigning from 1643 to 1715, builds a formidable state apparatus, centralizing power at Versailles, its gilded halls gleaming, and fostering a professional army. His foreign policy, driven by expansionist ambitions, leads to a series of wars, including the Franco-Dutch War, 1670–1678, and the War of the Spanish Succession, 1701–1714. These conflicts, while costly, solidify France's position as the leading continental power, renowned for its military might, cultural influence, and diplomatic prowess. Meanwhile, England, undergoing its own internal transformations, begins its ascent to global power. The Glorious Revolution of 1688 establishes a constitutional monarchy, limiting royal power and strengthening parliament, its voice growing louder. This political stability, coupled with a burgeoning merchant class and a powerful navy, its ships dominating the seas, lays the groundwork for commercial and colonial expansion. The Navigation Acts, starting in the mid-17th century, promote English shipping and trade, challenging Dutch dominance. The Anglo-Dutch Wars, 1650–1674, are fierce contests for maritime supremacy, ultimately leading to England's rise as the foremost naval power. The British East India Company, established in 1600, gradually extends its influence in India, a vast subcontinent rich in resources and trade opportunities. In Eastern Europe, new empires are taking shape. Russia, under Peter the Great, reigned 1680–1725, undergoes a radical modernization program, its society reshaped. He reforms the army and navy, westernizes the administration, and expands Russian territory significantly. The Great Northern War, 1717–21, against Sweden, then a major power, results in Russia gaining access to the Baltic Sea and founding St. Petersburg, a new capital designed to be Russia's window to the west, its grand avenues stretching to the sea. This victory firmly establishes Russia as a major European power. The Ottoman Empire, though still vast, begins to face increasing pressure from European powers. The Siege of Vienna in 1683, repelled by a coalition of European forces, marks a turning point, halting Ottoman expansion into Central Europe and signaling a slow decline, its power receding. The 18th century witnesses intensifying rivalries among these great powers. The War of the Austrian Succession, 1740–1748, and the 7 Years' War, 1756–1763, are global conflicts, fought across Europe, North America, and India, their battlefields stretching across continents. Great Britain and France emerge as the primary antagonists, competing for colonial empires and trade routes. The 7 Years' War, often considered the first true world war, is particularly decisive. Britain, under the leadership of William Pitt the Elder, triumphs over France, gaining vast territories in North America, including Canada, and consolidating its dominance in India. This victory establishes Britain as the preeminent global colonial power, controlling extensive trade networks and a burgeoning industrial base, its factories churning. The American Revolution, 1775–1783, while a blow to British imperial control in North America, demonstrates the growing power of colonial populations and the costs of maintaining a vast empire. France, seeking revenge for its defeat in the 7 Years' War, provides crucial support to the American revolutionaries, further straining its finances. The late 18th century brings revolutionary upheaval to France itself. The French Revolution, beginning in 1789, dismantles the old absolute monarchy, its Bastille walls crumbling, and unleashes powerful new ideologies of nationalism and popular sovereignty. The subsequent Napoleonic Wars, 1803–1815, plunge Europe into 2 decades of continuous conflict. Napoleon Bonaparte, a brilliant military strategist, builds an empire that, at its height, controls much of continental Europe. His Grande Armée, employing innovative tactics and mass conscription, repeatedly defeats the armies of the traditional European powers. However, Napoleon's ambitions ultimately overreach. The disastrous Russian campaign of 1812, with its biting cold and endless plains, combined with British naval supremacy and persistent resistance from other European states, leads to his eventual downfall. The Battle of Waterloo in 1815 marks the end of his imperial project. The Congress of Vienna, 1814–1815, attempts to restore the balance of power in Europe, establishing a system designed to prevent future hegemonic ambitions. Great Britain, having largely financed the coalitions against Napoleon and possessing an unchallenged navy, emerges from the Napoleonic Wars as the world's leading power. Its industrial revolution, already well underway, further fuels its economic and military might. The British Empire, expanding rapidly in the 19th century, encompasses vast swathes of India, Africa, Canada, Australia, and numerous smaller territories, controlling an estimated quarter of the world's land area and population by the turn of the 20th century. "The sun never sets on the British Empire" becomes a common adage, its truth visible on maps. The 19th century is characterized by the consolidation and expansion of European colonial empires, driven by industrialization, technological superiority, and a fervent belief in national destiny. The scramble for Africa intensifies from the 1880s, with European powers carving up the continent into colonies and protectorates, their lines drawn on maps. Britain, France, Germany, Belgium, Portugal, and Italy all acquire significant African territories, exploiting resources and labor. In Asia, British rule in India tightens after the Indian Rebellion of 1857, leading to direct British administration under the Raj. China, weakened by internal strife and external pressures, is subjected to a series of unequal treaties by Western powers and Japan, leading to the establishment of spheres of influence and treaty ports. The Opium Wars, 1839–1842 and 1856–1860, exemplify this coercive diplomacy, as British warships forced open Chinese ports. Meanwhile, new powers are rising outside of Europe. The United States, having expanded westward across the North American continent, its pioneers pushing frontiers, emerges from its Civil War, 1861–1865, as a unified and rapidly industrializing nation. Its vast natural resources, growing population, and technological innovation position it for future global influence. The Monroe Doctrine, proclaimed in 1823, asserts American hegemony in the Western Hemisphere, warning European powers against further colonization. By the late 19th century, the U.S. begins to project its power beyond its borders, notably in the Spanish-American War of 1898, which results in the acquisition of Cuba, Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines. Japan, a formerly isolated island nation, undergoes a remarkable transformation during the Meiji Restoration, 1868. Embracing Western industrial and military technologies, Japan rapidly modernizes its economy and army, its factories humming, its soldiers drilling. It embarks on its own imperial expansion, defeating China in the First Sino-Japanese War, 1894–1895, and Russia in the Russo-Japanese War, 1904–1905. A stunning victory for an Asian power over a European one. Japan establishes itself as the dominant power in East Asia, annexing Korea in 1910 and expanding its influence in Manchuria. Germany, unified under Otto von Bismarck in 1871, after a series of successful wars against Denmark, Austria, and France, rapidly industrializes and develops a powerful military, its new factories belching smoke. Its burgeoning economy and scientific advancements make it a formidable new player on the European stage, challenging the established order. The place in the sun, sought by Kaiser Wilhelm II, refers to Germany's desire for a colonial empire and greater global influence, leading to increased tensions with Britain and France. The early 20th century is characterized by an escalating arms race, intricate alliance systems, their threads tightly woven, and growing nationalist fervor. The Triple Entente, France, Russia, and Great Britain, and the Triple Alliance, Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy, stand poised against each other. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand in Sarajevo in June 1914 triggers a chain reaction that plunges Europe into the First World War. This unprecedented conflict, lasting from 1914 to 1918, is fought on a scale previously unimaginable, employing new technologies like machine guns, poison gas, tanks, and airplanes, their shadows falling across battlefields. Millions are killed, and entire landscapes are devastated, pockmarked by craters. The war profoundly reshapes the global power balance. The Russian Empire collapses in 1917, giving way to the Bolshevik Revolution and the establishment of the Soviet Union. The Austro-Hungarian and Ottoman empires are dismantled, their maps redrawn. Germany, defeated and burdened by the Treaty of Versailles, loses territory and is subjected to heavy reparations. Great Britain and France, though victorious, are severely weakened by the immense human and economic costs of the war, their treasuries drained. Their vast colonial empires, while still intact, face growing nationalist movements and demands for self-determination. The United States, entering the war late but decisively, emerges as a major global economic and financial power. President Woodrow Wilson's 14 points articulate a vision for a new international order based on self-determination and collective security, though the U.S. ultimately retreats into a period of isolationism, refusing to join the League of Nations. Japan, having seized German colonial possessions in the Pacific during the war, further consolidates its position as a regional hegemon. The interwar period, 1918–1939, is marked by economic instability, particularly the Great Depression of the 1930s, which leaves breadlines stretching for blocks and the rise of totalitarian regimes. In Germany, Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party come to power in 1933, embarking on an aggressive rearmament program and pursuing expansionist policies aimed at establishing a Greater German Reich. In Italy, Benito Mussolini's fascist regime harbors similar imperial ambitions, invading Ethiopia in 1935. In Asia, militaristic Japan continues its expansion, invading Manchuria in 1931 and launching a full-scale invasion of China in 1937, initiating the Second Sino-Japanese War. the League of Nations proves largely ineffective in preventing these acts of aggression, its voice a whisper. The aggressive expansion of Nazi Germany, culminating in the invasion of Poland on September 1, 1939, triggers the Second World War. This conflict, lasting from 1939 to 1945, is even more devastating than its predecessor, involving virtually every major nation and resulting in an estimated 70 to 85 million deaths. The Axis powers, Germany, Italy, and Japan, initially achieved significant successes, with Germany rapidly conquering much of Western Europe and Japan establishing a vast empire across East Asia and the Pacific. The blitzkrieg tactics employed by Germany proved devastatingly effective, its tanks rolling, its planes screaming. However, the tide begins to turn with the entry of the United States into the war after the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor in December 1941, and the Soviet Union's tenacious resistance against the German invasion in Operation Barbarossa, launched in June 1941, where Soviet soldiers fought street by street. The vast industrial capacity of the United States, its factories churning out war materials, coupled with the immense manpower of the Soviet Union and the resilience of Great Britain, forms the core of the Allied war effort. Fierce fighting on multiple fronts, from the deserts of North Africa to the frozen plains of Russia, and across the vast Pacific Ocean, grinds down the Axis powers. Strategic bombing campaigns devastate German and Japanese cities, leaving them as fields of rubble. The D-Day landings in Normandy in June 1944 open a second front in Western Europe, while the Soviet Red Army pushes relentlessly westward. The war in Europe concludes with Germany's unconditional surrender in May 1945. In the Pacific, the United States employs a strategy of island hopping, gradually pushing back Japanese forces. The atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August 1945, followed by the Soviet invasion of Manchuria, compel Japan to surrender, bringing the war to an end. The end of World War II in 1945 marks a significant shift in global power dynamics with the decline of European colonial empires. The Old World Order, dominated for centuries by European imperial powers, now crumbles under the weight of war and shifting ideologies. Great Britain, though victorious, is financially exhausted, its cities scarred, its global empire unsustainable. France, liberated but deeply wounded, struggles to rebuild. Germany and Japan lie in ruins, their former ambitions utterly crushed. A new bipolar world emerges from the ashes, dominated by two ideological titans: the capitalist United States and the communist Soviet Union. These two superpowers, allies of convenience against the Axis, now stand poised against each other, their fundamental differences irreconcilable. The United States, having emerged from the war with its industrial base intact and vastly expanded, possesses an unprecedented economic and military might. It holds a monopoly on atomic weapons, a terrifying new power demonstrated at Hiroshima and Nagasaki, leaving mushroom clouds. Its democratic ideals and capitalist system are seen as the path to prosperity and freedom. The Soviet Union, having borne the brunt of the Nazi war machine, suffers immense human and material losses, estimated at 27 million dead. Yet its Red Army occupies much of Eastern Europe, and its communist ideology, promising a classless society and an end to exploitation, holds a powerful appeal for many, particularly in war-torn and decolonizing nations. The immediate post-war period sees the rapid unraveling of European colonial empires. In Asia, India gains independence from Britain in 1947, though tragically partitioned into India and Pakistan, their borders drawn in blood. The Dutch East Indies declare independence as Indonesia in 1945, leading to a brutal four-year war before Dutch recognition in 1949. France struggles to retain control of Indochina, culminating in the First Indochina War, 1946–1954, and the decisive French defeat at Dien Bien Phu. The British Empire dismantles itself with remarkable speed, granting independence to Ceylon, Sri Lanka, and Burma, Myanmar, in 1948, and Malaya, Malaysia, in 1957. In Africa, the wave of decolonization intensifies in the late 1950s and 1960s. Ghana becomes the first sub-Saharan African nation to gain independence from Britain in 1957. Under the leadership of Kwame Nkrumah, its new flag unfurled. France, after a bloody war, grants Algeria independence in 1962. By the mid-1960s, most African nations are independent, though many face the daunting challenges of nation-building, poverty, and Cold War proxy conflicts, their new borders often fragile. These newly independent nations, often referred to as the Third World, become a battleground for influence between the United States and the Soviet Union. The division of Germany and Berlin into 4 occupation zones, administered by the United States, Great Britain, France, and the Soviet Union, quickly becomes a flashpoint. In 1948, the Soviet Union imposes a blockade on West Berlin, attempting to starve out the Western Allies. The United States and Great Britain respond with the Berlin airlift, supplying the city by air for nearly a year, a monumental logistical achievement that ultimately forces the Soviets to lift the blockade in May 1949. This event solidifies the division of Germany, leading to the creation of the Federal Republic of Germany, West Germany, and the German Democratic Republic, East Germany, in 1949. The Cold War, a state of geopolitical tension without direct, large-scale military conflict between the two superpowers, officially begins. It is a struggle waged through proxy wars, espionage, an arms race, and ideological competition, its battlefields hidden. In 1949, the Soviet Union successfully detonates its first atomic bomb, ending the American nuclear monopoly and ushering in an era of mutually assured destruction, MAD. This same year, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, is formed, a military alliance between the United States, Canada, and several Western European nations, designed to counter Soviet expansion in Europe. The Soviet Union responds in 1955 with the creation of the Warsaw Pact, a similar military alliance with its Eastern European satellite states. In Asia, the Chinese Civil War, which had been paused during World War II, resumes with ferocity. In 1949, Mao Zedong's Communist Party of China defeats Chiang Kai-shek's nationalist Kuomintang, forcing the nationalists to retreat to Taiwan. The establishment of the People's Republic of China, a communist nation of immense size and population, fundamentally alters the global balance of power and represents a significant setback for American containment policy. The United States refuses to recognize the PRC for decades, instead recognizing the Republic of China on Taiwan as the legitimate government of China. The Korean War, 1950–1953, becomes the first major hot conflict of the Cold War. After North Korea, supported by the Soviet Union and China, invades South Korea, a United Nations force, primarily American, intervenes to defend the South. The war stalemates along the 38th parallel, resulting in millions of casualties and a heavily fortified border that persists to this day, a scar across the land. This war underscores the dangers of direct confrontation between the superpowers and solidifies the commitment of the United States to containing communism in Asia. The 1950s witness a rapid escalation of the arms race. Both the United States and the Soviet Union develop hydrogen bombs, far more powerful than atomic bombs, their tests sending tremors through the Earth. The launch of Sputnik I by the Soviet Union in 1957, the first artificial satellite to orbit Earth, shocks the United States and triggers the space race, a technological competition with significant military implications. The development of intercontinental ballistic missiles, ICBMs, capable of delivering nuclear warheads across continents further heightens global anxieties. Throughout the 1950s and 1960s, the United States, under presidents like Harry S. Truman, Dwight D. Eisenhower, and John F. Kennedy pursues a policy of containment, aiming to prevent the spread of communism like a fire. This involves military alliances, economic aid, and covert operations. The Marshall Plan, launched in 1948, provides billions of dollars in aid to rebuild Western European economies, effectively binding them to the capitalist sphere and blunting the appeal of communism. The Soviet Union, under leaders like Joseph Stalin and Nikita Khrushchev, solidifies its control over Eastern Europe. The suppression of the Hungarian Revolution in 1956 by Soviet tanks demonstrates the brutal reality of Soviet dominance in its sphere of influence. Khrushchev's secret speech, in 1956 denouncing Stalin's cult of personality and crimes, while not leading to immediate liberalization, signals a slight thaw in internal Soviet politics. The early 1960s bring the world to the brink of nuclear war. In 1961, the Soviet Union constructs the Berlin Wall, physically dividing East and West Berlin and becoming a stark symbol of the Iron Curtain. The Cuban Missile Crisis in October 1962, triggered by the discovery of Soviet nuclear missiles in Cuba, just 90 miles from the US. Coast is perhaps the most dangerous moment of the Cold War. For 13 tense days, the world holds its breath as President Kennedy and Premier Khrushchev engage in a high-stakes standoff. A naval blockade of Cuba and intense diplomatic negotiations ultimately lead to the withdrawal of Soviet missiles in exchange for a U.S. pledge not to invade Cuba and a secret agreement to remove U.S. missiles from Turkey. The Vietnam War, 1950–1975, becomes a protracted and costly conflict for the United States. Following the French withdrawal, the U.S. becomes deeply involved in supporting South Vietnam against the Communist North, fearing a domino effect where one country's fall to communism would lead to others. American military involvement escalates dramatically in the mid-1960s, reaching over 500,000 troops. The war proves deeply divisive within the United States and ultimately ends with the Communist victory in 1975, a significant blow to American prestige and its containment strategy. Despite the intense rivalry, periods of détente, or easing of tensions, emerge. In the late 1960s and 1970s, under President Richard Nixon and Soviet General Secretary Leonid Brezhnev, efforts are made to reduce the risk of nuclear war. The Strategic Arms Limitation Treaties, SALT-I in 1972 and SALT-II in 1979, aim to limit the growth of nuclear arsenals. Nixon's historic visit to China in 1972, orchestrating a rapprochement with Beijing, is a geopolitical masterstroke that creates a strategic triangle, exploiting the growing Sino-Soviet split and putting pressure on the Soviet Union. However, détente proves fragile. The Soviet invasion of Afghanistan in December 1979, aimed at propping up a communist regime, shatters the fragile peace and marks the end of détente. The United States, under President Jimmy Carter and later Ronald Reagan, responds with a boycott of the 1980 Moscow Olympics, increased military spending, and support for the Afghan Mujahideen resistance. The war in Afghanistan becomes a costly and protracted quagmire for the Soviet Union, often referred to as Russia's Vietnam. The 1980s see a renewed escalation of the Cold War, particularly under President Ronald Reagan. Reagan labels the Soviet Union an evil empire and initiates a massive military buildup including the Strategic Defense Initiative, SDI, dubbed Star Wars. A controversial missile defense system, its lasers a futuristic vision. This increased pressure, coupled with the ongoing economic stagnation within the Soviet bloc, strains the Soviet system to its breaking point. Meanwhile, economic power shifts continue. Japan, rebuilt with U.S. aid and fueled by technological innovation and export-driven growth, emerges as a global economic powerhouse in the 1970s and 1980s, challenging American industrial dominance. West Germany also experiences an economic miracle, becoming a leading industrial nation once more. The late 1980s bring a dramatic and unexpected turn to global politics. Mikhail Gorbachev, who becomes General Secretary of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union in 1985, introduces radical reforms: glasnost, openness, and perestroika, restructuring. These policies aim to revitalize the Soviet economy and society, but inadvertently unleash forces that ultimately lead to the collapse of the Soviet Union itself. The loosening of central control, coupled with economic stagnation and the rising tide of nationalism in the Soviet republics, proves to be an unstoppable wave. Across Eastern Europe, popular movements for democracy gain momentum. In 1989, a series of largely peaceful revolutions sweeps away communist regimes. The fall of the Berlin Wall in November 1989, a symbolic act of immense significance, signals the beginning of the end of the Cold War. Germany is reunified in 1990, a historic moment that reshapes the European landscape. One by one, the Soviet satellite states declare their independence, their flags raised anew. Finally, in December 1991, the Soviet Union formally dissolves, ending 7 decades of communist rule and the bipolar world order. The United States stands alone as the world's sole superpower, its victory in the Cold War seemingly complete. The post-Cold War era, initially hailed as a new world order by President George H.W. Bush, is marked by American unipolarity. The United States, with its unparalleled military, economic, and cultural influence, seems poised to shape global affairs without a major rival. The Gulf War in 1991, where a U.S.-led coalition swiftly liberates Kuwait from Iraqi invasion, showcases American military dominance and technological superiority. This period sees a rise in globalization, with interconnected economies and the spread of democratic ideals. However, this unipolar moment is not without its complexities and challenges. The 1990s witnessed numerous regional conflicts and humanitarian crises, from the Balkans to Rwanda, demonstrating that the end of the Cold War did not bring an end to conflict. The rise of non-state actors, particularly transnational terrorist organizations, presents a new kind of threat. The September 11, 2001, terrorist attacks on the United States, orchestrated by Al-Qaeda, fundamentally shift American foreign policy, initiating the War on Terror and leading to invasions of Afghanistan and Iraq. These protracted conflicts, while demonstrating American military reach, also highlight the limitations of military power in resolving complex geopolitical and cultural issues, and the immense costs, both human and financial, of maintaining global stability. As the 21st century progresses, the global power landscape begins to diversify once more. The rise of China is arguably the most significant geopolitical development of this era. Following Deng Xiaoping's economic reforms in the late 1970s, China embarks on an unprecedented period of economic growth, transforming itself from an impoverished, isolated nation into the world's second-largest economy by GDP. Its manufacturing prowess, massive population, and growing technological capabilities make it a formidable economic power. China's Belt and Road Initiative, a massive infrastructure and investment project spanning continents, demonstrates its ambition to reshape global trade and influence. While still developing in many aspects, China's military modernization, including its Navy and space program, signals its aspirations for greater geopolitical weight. Its unique blend of authoritarian governance and state-controlled capitalism presents a different model of development, one that challenges the prevailing Western liberal democratic consensus. India, the world's largest democracy, also emerges as a significant power. With its vast and youthful population, rapidly growing economy, and burgeoning technological sector, India's influence on the global stage is steadily increasing. It is a major player in international forums and a nuclear power, asserting its strategic autonomy while navigating complex relationships with both the West and China. Russia, after the economic and political turmoil of the 1990s, experiences a resurgence under Vladimir Putin. Leveraging its vast energy resources and modernizing its military, Russia reasserts itself as a major power, particularly in its near abroad and on the global energy market. Its interventions in Georgia, Ukraine, and Syria demonstrate a willingness to challenge the US-led international order, seeking to restore its geopolitical standing. The European Union, a unique supranational entity, represents a different kind of power. Born from the ashes of two world wars, it has evolved into a powerful economic bloc with a combined GDP comparable to that of the United States. While facing internal challenges, such as Brexit and economic disparities, the EU's collective diplomatic weight, its commitment to multilateralism, and its regulatory power make it a crucial actor in global affairs. Germany, as the largest economy within the EU, and France, with its permanent seat on the UN Security Council and nuclear arsenal, remain significant individual powers within this collective framework. Other regional powers are also asserting themselves. Brazil, as the largest economy in Latin America, plays a vital role in regional stability and global climate discussions. South Africa, an economic powerhouse on the African continent, contributes significantly to regional security and development. Countries like South Korea, with its advanced technology and vibrant economy, and Australia, with its strategic location and strong alliances, also wield considerable influence in their respective regions and on the global stage. The concept of power itself continues to evolve in the modern era. While military might and economic strength remain crucial, other factors are increasingly important. Soft power, encompassing cultural influence, diplomatic skill, and the attractiveness of a country's values and institutions, plays a significant role in shaping international perceptions and outcomes. Technological innovation, particularly in areas like artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, and biotechnology, is becoming a new frontier of power competition. Access to critical resources, control over global supply chains, and resilience to climate change are also increasingly vital determinants of national strength and influence. The world today is characterized by a complex, multipolar distribution of power, far removed from the clear-cut empires of antiquity or the bipolar standoff of the Cold War. The United States remains a preeminent power, but its dominance is increasingly challenged by the rise of China and the resurgence of Russia, alongside the collective strength of the European Union and the growing influence of other regional actors. Global challenges, such as climate change, pandemics, economic inequality, and nuclear proliferation, demand international cooperation, even as geopolitical rivalries persist. The narrative of powerful countries is a continuous saga, a testament to humanity's ambition, innovation, and sometimes, its destructive tendencies. From the pharaohs of ancient Egypt to the superpowers of the 21st century, the quest for influence and control has driven civilizations, shaped borders, and transformed the course of history. As we look to the future, the dynamic interplay of these global forces will continue to define our world, constantly shifting, constantly evolving,